Servant leadership relies a lot on God. When the people of Israel were freed from the captivity in Egypt and they took off into the desert, they didn't have much food. They maybe had 3 or 4 days worth of supplies with them. How were they going to survive in the wilderness? They counted on God to supply, didn't they? And He sent the manna from heaven, and He sent the birds that they could catch and snare to have meat. He directed them to where there was water. They found the resources that they needed along the way. Servant leadership is a trusting leadership that travels light and relies on God and says if we do our part, God will supply. Servant leadership works best from the fringes. What I mean by that is servant leadership is not in the middle of the big organization and the big bureaucracy. Servant leadership most of the time is on the edges where people actually touch and serve lives. Servant leadership is when members of this church go to the elementary school and sit and read with a student for 45 minutes. And time again, that's been proven it's the best possible thing you can do to improve reading scores, to simply have someone sit and read. Servant leadership has to do with us going out into the community and being at Martha's table and Mary's closet down at Person Street as people come in, and actually handing people food and allowing them to shop in the little unit that they have there, the little store that they have there. It doesn't cost very much. 25 cents for a shirt, 50 cents for a pair of pants, and then you pick up some toothpaste and washcloth and the kind of things that people lose on the street, and you're equipped for another week. Servant leadership. You know, Jesus acts like a servant. He acts out being a servant. On the night in which He gave Himself up for us, Jesus Christ took a towel, and wrapped it around His waist, and then went and washed the disciples' feet. What a servant would do. And He says, if you want to be like me, you have to act like me. You have to serve people. You have to touch them. It wasn't an indirect ministry. We can't call up 1-800-WASH-A-FOOT and get somebody else to do it. It's us that have to get down on our knees and wash the feet and dry the feet and be the servant. The word for servant in the New Testament is the word doulos. It's Greek. And it can just as well be translated slave. It certainly means humble servant. It means the servant in the household who's at the bottom of the barrel. It's not the highest servant that stands by the guest and the host. It's the servant that's the least. Be like me, the humble servant. The one that counts themselves as nothing and pours themselves out for others. People are watching. People are watching how you act and the example that you set. The greatest sermon that we can give, right? It's how we act in this world, not so much what we say. And that especially falls on us, the religious community, and it especially falls on us, the preachers. They do all their deeds to be seen by others. They make their phylacteries broad. The phylacteries are the side pieces of hair that come down. They make them big, and some even curl them up into round curlets. And their fringes, they wear a shawl with long fringes, and so the people with the really long fringes are really, really religious because they're praying with those fringes all the time. One of the things I found out when I took my preacher buddies down to Bayboro on Tuesday was that October is Pastor Appreciation Month. I didn't know that. I didn't know it. No, nobody had come up to me and said, "Oh, by the way, it's Pastor Appreciation Month this month, Pastor." And they were telling stories about pastors that primarily not in the Methodist church, but especially in the more holiness-oriented churches, they really lean into it on Pastor Appreciation Month. If you love God, then you need to give so-and-so to your pastor, and your pastor needs a new car, your pastor needs a new motorcycle, your pastor needs a trip to the beach. And some of these big Pentecostalist churches here in town, it's not uncommon at all for $10,000, $15,000 worth of things to come in during Pastor Appreciation Month. I'm going to start instituting this next year. I think it's a great idea. How dare they do that? How dare they lay burdens on others and not lift a finger to lift them themselves? We're going to restore the joy of servanthood, the joy and the freedom of giving of ourselves to others. Most of the time when your hands are busy and your heart is full, you don't have time to say much negative about others. And in the midst of the challenges that we have in this great church, my commitment is to not lay burdens on anyone, but to lift those burdens and help us to enjoy the freedom and the power that comes from servant leadership. And we'll do it together, and we'll smile together. All those who exalt themselves will be humbled. All those who humbled will be exalted. The greatest among you will be a servant. We're going to live into servant ministry, encouraging each other in the name of Christ. Amen. Amen.